Hi, welcome to Ideaspring Founders podcast series. Today I'm in conversation with the founders of LatentForce, Professor Prathosh, Aravind and Vinay. And I would like to talk about the journey of LatentForce and the dynamics between the students and the professor in building a startup. And I'd explore the future for LatentForce. So with that, we shall get going. So Aravind, I'll start with you, since you're driving LatentForce as a CEO now, as to how did this even come about? What was the genesis of LatentForce?
Yeah, the journey starts a little far back, right? So um, we were all there at IIT Delhi sometime in 2017. So I had joined for my masters. Vinay had joined. We were wingmates, and we were actually looking for a lab to do our thesis on, right? Like, so then we figured out, hey, there's a new young professor who has joined the college, and he's working on deep learning. And for some reason, I and Vinay, we were always betting on neural networks. We found that fascinating. So in our first semesters, we had done like courses in machine learning and figured out that, hey, this is something that's going to be huge, and wanted to spend the rest of the 2 years, right, doing research work on that. So that's when we met Prathosh sir, right, and he was our mentor there. So we met sometime back in 2017, like December or something like that, right? And we started working under him. And he was running a dedicated deep learning lab at IIT Delhi. So I think this was one of the only places at that time I could think of in the country where a professor was dedicating a lab only for deep learning, right? And so there were labs who were kind of doing things around machine learning, doing the classical machine learning stuff with SVMs and whatnots. But there's no lab which was there that was dedicated for deep learning, and he was running that, right? So we joined there. We started working on a whole bunch of things, and coincidentally, so we worked on something called as deep generative models. Again, this is back in 2017, right?
That is all pre-Gen
All pre
AI,
the
all
Gen AI
transformer.
buzz and all those things, right? So we started working on that, and at that time, we used to sort of generate these images of handwritten digits, which are 32 by 32 pixels wide, right? Like, this is really small images of handwritten digits using a method called generative adversarial networks, called GANs. And that was the topic of my thesis, and Vinay's as well, right? So we used to work on a bunch of things like GANs and variational autoencoders, all generating all
What
these
was it
small
again, and which is the other one?
variational autoencoders, VAEs.
Autoencoders.
Yeah,
Okay. Right.
autoencoders, generative models again, right? So we used to work on that a lot and generate these small images. And we used to be lucky enough because at that time IIT Delhi had a really good supercomputing cluster and a GPU supercomputing cluster. So I think all over India, I don't think any academic institution had a GPU supercomputing cluster with it, right? So we had access to a really large 42 node GPU supercomputing cluster, and we
What GPU? So this is our
I
usual
think it's
NVIDIA
like K80s
GPU.
or something like that. Like those would be considered better than worse off than running models on a CPU right now, right? They were that ancient, right? But yeah, at that time they did their jobs, and we started running a lot of experiments. Again, he was a really good vendor at that time, and we started publishing in top tier conferences like UAI, iClear, submitting.
You'll have to acronymize,
Yeah, it's like
anachronize those, and people will not understand.
yeah. So there are a bunch of conferences like International Conference on Learning Representations, ICLR, then ICML, International Conference on Machine Learning, then AAAI.
And they are the gold standard for publication.
Yeah, tier one papers. And I think that's where the foundation of LatentForce was initially laid. Why? Because when I first talked to him, he told me one thing, right, which sticks to me. Right? He told, Aravind, let's try to, publish in the top journals. Don't try to publish in the smaller ones so that you get your degree and go from here. But rather, why don't we just aim for the best, right? Like, why don't we aim for the best in the world?
Yeah, no. So fast forward to but that was 2017.
Yeah,
But when
that,
did you
that is
start?
27. That is 2017. Then post that, we all moved our separate ways. And whatever we had been working on, right, like deep generative models, those picked up, especially with the ChatGPT moment in a new name called Gen
That's
AI.
what 2023.
This is 2022 September, October. I don't remember exactly, right? So then we realized, hey, whatever we were doing at that time, the small images which you're generating, etc., were like purely for academic interest, right? They have real applications in the real world, right? And we could see the trajectory. So at that time, I was working in Misho, and I was in their data science team, right? So when GPT-4 released, I think sometime in 2023 March, right? I realized that, and I got a subscription for that, like on day one, right? And then I gave it a particular problem that I was solving at Meesho to GPT-4 and to see the solution that it generates. It almost generated 80% of it, right? So that's when it clicked. These models are going to be super useful, especially for coding and related applications. And that's when we started coming together and thought about forming LatentForce, right? So this was like an explosion.
And what
of
did
ideas.
you, when you started LatentForce, what was your goal/vision to?
Yeah, so
And then what you and Vinay were aligned at that time, not aligned at that time.
Yeah, so
what do you guys do?
Initially started LatentForce as sort of like a small lab, smaller version of a lab, right? So we put out different products. So we put out an agent framework. We put out an extraction pipeline, like extract protocol called extractors.ai. We worked on a few prototypes called Justiflow, etc. Right? And why we did things like that is because GenAI had like really large applications, really wide applications, and we wanted to try out different things, right? So that is how LatentForce initially started, and we landed enterprise contracts with a few customers early on. Like this is back in early 2024. We landed a few enterprise deals with a bunch of companies in the UAE and Singapore to build customized agentic solutions for them, right? And this were kind of like we built something very similar to MCPs much before that came into practice, right? So we started commercializing that, and that's how it all started.
Okay, so now, so if am I right in saying that LatentForce vision now is to develop novel methods to improve develop software development efficiency in the current AI world? Is that a right representation of the tagline for LatentForce now?
Correct.
So moving on, when I one of the things that is happening as we see on a daily basis, things change in AI. It's not on a daily basis, but on an hourly basis, things are changing, right? I mean, whether it is coding, whether it's testing, whether it's generation, production, whatever it is, everything is being completely disrupted now. So in today's world, having this vision that we just discussed for LatentForce, what are the challenges that you see from a technology perspective? You being the CTO of LatentForce, how do you even get your arms around how tech is moving, what other guys are doing, what's the competition is doing, how do you stay ahead? Isn't it complete madness out there?
Yes, 100%. See, we see a lot of LinkedIn posts and everything. The technology is evolving very fast. See, but what we are trying to build is not to compete with whatever is happening, to add on top of it. Like, see, majorly we are focusing on the enterprise code bases, how to make these agents understand the code bases in much better way so that the performance will be much better. So whatever we are taking up is actually on top of whatever the coding agents are there. It is going to improve their accuracy and reduce the tokens.
So will that be hence what? Is that a feature for a large company, or is still a product? How do you see that?
It's a kind of a product. Like, for example,
it's kind of a product. Is it a product?
It's a product. See, right now what is happening? We have agents and people are testing everything. But these work very good for some POC level. But as the code base becomes larger and larger, and this code base have evolved over so many years. So there is a lot of intent, lot of technology has gone into it. And current coding agents, to understand them, it is a very complex thing. So when they are performing the task, it actually, as the code base is around like 10 million lines of code, this coding agents has to go through the entire code base again and again, and it cannot go through it very well. So it hallucinates in the process. So what we are trying to build is that there is a code base, there are coding agents. Can we have one unified layer that can actually bridge the gap between them, bridges the gap between them?
Yeah.
So that is what we are calling as our latent graphs. So we actually mine all the details from the code base, get all the explicit connections, implicit connections. We create a lot of documentation on top of it, so that there is a unified context layer across the entire enterprise, so that people can use it.
So what are the benefits to the user? So you're giving me the context of the graphs, and those are all technology terms. That's what happens under the hood. But why should somebody use it? What is the benefits for the user?
Yes. Like, for example, right now when we look at the coding agents, now in a company, like, everybody is providing their own context to the coding agents to perform it. But if you look at an architect, the kind of a context that he provides to the coding agent versus a normal developer, because not everybody has a full context about everything. Now, if you have one layer which grasp all the edge cases, which has all the things at one place, so the coding agents, when they perform the task with this accurate and curated knowledge layer, they perform better.
What is better? So give me a number as to why, what is your reference point for better?
Yes.
What are you?
So when we call it as a better, so see, if there is a task, when a coding agent performs the task, it actually, when there is no proper context, it creates its own database, its own microservice.
Abstractions and things.
Yeah. But for example, with our unified knowledge layer, with proper curated data layer, what happens is that these coding agents can understand what are the systems currently available in a proper way, so that the agent, when it performs the task, it tries to fit into this ecosystem rather than creating its own things.
So the accuracy of the code is better, or the maintenance of the
Yes, the maintenance of the code becomes better, and the accuracy as well. And in the process, the number of tokens consumed will reduce a lot.
So Prathosh, coming to you now, one of the key reasons where Ideaspring also invested in LatentForce was because you're the driving force behind it, and because the depth of the knowledge, right? Now, if I have to compare, contrast LatentForce being India and suppose say LatentForce was in the US, because you do look at the US market, you see lot happening there. What are the advantages and disadvantages of LatentForce being India as opposed to being in the US, as you see it in various aspects?
So can I be honest here?
Yes, please speak.
Okay. Maybe this will not make you happy, but had we been in San Francisco, we would have raised much more money. Right? So
money is one. Yeah. So disadvantage is capital.
Yeah. So talking, on a serious.
But we could not have found us though. But
come again.
You would not have found.
Oh, of course. I have not found this and that. Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure to work with you. See, the thing is, good thing. Let's talk about the good things first. I would say that the ecosystem in Bangalore, at least now, is decently vibrant. You cannot
in the AI,
of course, you cannot compare it with Bay Area,
of course, yeah.
But it's definitely the best in the country, and also perhaps in the world. I mean, you talk about San Francisco and then you talk about Bangalore. So people do understand what's happening. And for instance, right, I mean, you funded us, and also we are funded by Yali as well. So they understood that the deep tech actually takes time. And one thing that a complaint that always comes up is that people talk of deep tech, especially the investor ecosystem, but they won't give us enough time. So day one you are asking for revenue, but now you are invested in us for about 6 to 8 months now, and we always hear, we seldom hear about revenue complaints and so on, right? You have given us a lot of freedom to work with. So that kind of understanding has come in. So that way, investors are understanding and they know what's happening in the ecosystem, and they are now talking to professors. This is one big change that has happened. So if you look at the evolution of ecosystem in the Bay Area, so today the Bay Area is what it is because 20 years back, or rather 25, 30 years back, few professors from good universities started companies. One example is Motwani and the students, which gave rise to Google. So, and Qualcomm is a university startup, right? Broadcom, and so many companies came out. Bose is another example. So that entire ecosystem where Stanford feeds into the startup ecosystem was missing here, right? Now I think people are slowly realizing. See, the point is, if you look at the academic profiles of faculty here in India, at least the top 10%, 20% are comparable to the best of the best in the world. Because we're trying there, we are here, we're doing the same thing. The only thing is the people in the other side of the table wouldn't understand and realize how important it is to fund innovation. Because gone are the days where we can build companies over arbitrage, I think, right? So the economy is evolving in a very, very different direction, and we cannot bank on service economy anymore.
True.
So, I used to, the current director of DeepMind in India was my manager in my first job. There is Dr. Manish Gupta. I always make this statement that there is no other way than innovation to build business. So I think I'm pretty much convinced. I could not see the gravity of his statement. Now that I've become a businessman, I understand. Because if you want to stay ahead, when you just asked Vinay, right? How do you stay ahead of your competition? So many things are coming up. See, Anthropic become what it is because of the innovation that they did, right? So today,
And they still continue to innovate like
right?
this.
And we live in an economy or in a time where some company in China, like DeepSeek, can come up with an algorithm which is GRPO, and the world just changes overnight. So people have seen time and again that deep innovation will actually create enormous value, and that value gets translated into economic value eventually. So this understanding was missing in the Indian ecosystem, because the companies that have become very successful in the Indian ecosystem are mostly the ones that face consumers directly, right? All the quick commerce, e-commerce kind of companies. And now, where is the deep tech innovation coming from India? So now I think the VC ecosystem is mature enough to understand. So now that they have seen success, tasted a lot of money, now I think they also can afford a lot more failures in investing in these startups. So I think that is something that has happened, and we are happy to be in this time.
Right, correct. But restricting ourselves to what's happening in the AI for a second, right? So one is your comment on deep tech, ecosystem and support. I think that's very, very important, and India needs to do that. No two hoods about, right? But now, if you look at in the context of AI, right? You track the research that's happening, and you track the advances that are happening. So specifically, hence with LatentForce, how do we stay ahead in the market with so many things happening and all over the places, right? What is your thought on the innovation? Innovation has to be backed by good research, right? Backed by whether it's a startup or university, whatever. Innovation requires research. It's not just an engineering problem; it's a research problem as well. So how do you see that evolving in LatentForce? Specifically for latent.
I would actually quote from one of your own favorite quotes, right? Inch wide, mile depth.
Correct.
Mile deep. So I think I believe in that theory. So even when I work in my laboratory, I tell my students that, Aravind was just mentioning, right? Whatever we do, we should be world class in whatever we do. We don't have to solve all problems in the world. So whatever problem we take up, we be the best in that particular area, sub area, like a micro area is what it is. That creates value. So what we are doing in LatentForce is that we take this one problem and we are trying to be the best in the world in whatever problem we solve. Right? So that's the only way. See,
and that's this problem now you're talking about is coding efficiency.
Coding
is
efficiency,
that the problem?
Yeah, at a very high level, coding efficiency is the problem. I think you can actually boil it down to a very, very specific sub-problem that we would want to solve. We are looking at, can I be a little more technical?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. See, actual problems that we are looking to solve and be the best in the world is, think about this entire coding agent, or rather any AI agent for that matter, as an extraordinarily intelligent agent or a human being that forgets. Now, let's say that how does it feel to interact with such a human being who is extraordinarily intelligent, and a generalist, but forgets whatever you said yesterday, right? So it's very hard. So every day you come and you tell them the entire context, and then even to get them up to the speed, you'll have to consume a lot of their brain power. Agents' brain power is tokens today, and every token costs dollars, right? So what we are trying to do is, think of it like cars came, right? It will take you to point A to point B, but it has evolved over century now. So what are the innovations that have come up? Efficiency is one thing that you are looking at. How does efficiently translate to in the case of an intelligent system is that you consume lesser amount of token. It's the token efficiency. Now, how do you reduce token efficiency? It is by providing context. Right? How do you provide context is the question. That to curate, especially in enterprise use cases, right, where the knowledge has actually evolved over decades. So people who are architects for, let's say, 20, 25 years in a company will know how the software actually evolved. How do these agents even have an understanding of all that? So how do you solve that problem is one question. The other question that we are looking at is the question of memory. So, I use a lot of these agents these days. I was just telling you, right? I've now become a developer myself. So what happens is, I'm building something. Today I'm building. I go to sleep. And tomorrow I come back and open the agent. The agent doesn't know anything about what I did yesterday. right?
Markov process, you forgot what happened the previous stage.
Absolutely. So now there is another problem, right? I mean, one naive solution would be to way to solve this problem is to just dump all the things that you did with an agent in every session. Such an inefficient way to do it. So one has to ask questions like, what is to be stored? How should the information be organized and stored? And what is to be forgotten as well? So we are looking at these ideas called Bayesian belief networks, right? Where neural networks become probabilistic themselves, where they're not hard coded. So you can actually probabilistically erase the memory of a network and so on, is the kind of ideas that we are trying out. But the point is, at any given point in time, take a sub-problem, be the best in the world, right? And that may create value. The one question may be, what if some competitor does it? Fine, they are better, we'll take some other problem and try to be the best in the world. That's the mantra.
Yeah. So Aravind, coming back to you, taking Prathosh's things, solving the problem the best, right? Whichever sub-problem the best. The question now becomes, that's fine. How do you find the market? Right? The business, revenue, right? And now, so I know when you started discussing LatentForce about a year ago before we came on board as investors along with Yali, the thought was we'll do code migration, right? But now I think we have the companies evolving towards a more generic approach of like what Prathosh just mentioned and what you also mentioned on context graphs and then increasing the efficiency. Now, next 6 months, right? How do you now intend to now take this, saying, we have solved this the best. This is what developers require. And we got to get people to use it in whichever, whether they're using, Anthropic or any other lovable, whatever cursor, but they have to use our product now. So what's your thought in taking this to the market with this being the best in the world in this particular case?
See, I would say, the first thing is that, the market for coding agents is one of the hottest markets right now, right? Like, so it's the thing that's happening in the world right now, right? And
is it too hot to touch, or is it still manageable?
It's manageable, I would say, right? Like if you know how to sort of handle it, like it's still manageable, right? But it's moving at such a good pace, right? And it's good. Why? Because when we initially started all these things, if you go to a customer and say that, hey, we have built this coding agent that can do end-to-end coding tasks for you, right? The failure rates were something like like more than 50%, right? So they couldn't see the value that much, right? Right now, when we are going with a product like this, we are first of all able to show them really good value. Why? Because the benchmarks have gone up. Why? And that happens because the underlying models have become better, and our context layers and all the algorithms around that have become better, right? So one is that the problem is like pretty real. So if you look at people who are using Cloud Code or Codex, etc., there is this thing in the market that for people who have bought EVs, right, there is something called as an range anxiety that happens. It's like whether I'm going to run out of battery power on my way home, right? So there is something like that happens in the coding market, which is that, hey, am I going to run out of my quota by 12 o'clock in the morning so that I don't have...
And then I've heard in some cases they are budgeting or they're throttling the number of tokens you can use.
Correct. Right?
We do it all.
Yeah. So that's a real big pain problem, right? And our product directly addresses that, right? So we again are planning a product release in the coming week, right? So we have really good benchmark numbers against all the competitors. So our context layer is like doing 2x better than any other context layer in terms of accuracies. Once you plug them into the context coding agents, we are cheaper by a factor of 10x for creating and maintaining that context graph, right? So all of that translates to value for the end customers that they can immediately see, right? So put that product to the market out there, right? And let the market decide, right? Because in a market as fast as this, the only way that you can get customers is to ship fast, right? Innovate quickly, right? And get the product to the market in a form that people can immediately see value from it, right? So that is what we are working on right now.
Okay. And then, so which markets are you looking at to get?
Right now, it's developer markets, right? So bottom-up adoption for developers. So anybody who's using Codex, Cloud Code, Open Code, or any of the coding agents would directly benefit from using our context layer on top of their systems, right? So that's one layer of things. And teams, so smaller teams who are using Codex or Cloud Code for their development, they can plug into the context graph. The team can curate the context graph in such a way that it compounds across time, right? So that's what we are figuring.
So Vinay, one of the key things that's required in these areas is talent, right? Talent is fundamental. How has it been for you to hire good talent in this AI ecosystem? Because, we are not just doing something at the higher level, right? You're actually looking at algorithmic talent and students of Prathosh maybe, or as the case may be. But in terms of your ability to build a good talented team in Bangalore, what has been your experience on that?
So first thing is that because we have Dr. Prathosh here, so most of his students actually are willing to join our company. So we have one process.
People still follow him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So see, majorly most of our people are from IITs and IISc. So we have this process called, we take people, put them in 6 months internship. Based on the success of that internship, we actually convert them. That's how we are able to curate and get the high quality folks. Yeah. So till now it has been good.
So far so good.
So far it's
we have been able to
and
attract
majorly
really
because
good
of
talent.
all these coding agents, with less number of people, we are able to get more productivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have been able to attract, I would say, really killer talent. Why? Because, for us, if you put a post for hiring, right, him resharing it one time will get us close to around 3,000 to 4,000 applications overnight. And we do get really good exposure to students in really top tier universities, and get access to people who are really into ML.
Yes.
Right, because most of those people follow him for his lectures. Right?
One more thing to add
that's
is
been
that
quite good.
as we are working on the cutting edge technology, right? Actually, these people are very interested to work with us. So in the interview, when we look at them, they are more excited to work on this kind of a technology. So we are seeing people who have actually, although they had multiple offers, but they have chosen us over the other MNCs because they are getting to work here.
So Prathosh, I'll ask you one other question related to continuation of this talent, right? If you look at across the world in terms of particularly AI, where foundational work is being done, there's a lot of research that happens in the startup also, and implying that you need capital access for computational needs or to hire good talent. We have heard stories that AI engineers or top AI talent is going for hundreds of not $1 million, but tens or hundreds of $1 million, right? And we are not in that space. But however, in our capacity, whatever we can support, how would you see LatentForce, trying to manage that, right? You're balancing that with the research you can do from IISc or with, and then bring that over to LatentForce or invest in research inside LatentForce. How are you seeing that balancing act happening? Because you obviously need this kind of research to happen, right? To do work on be the best in the world has to happen here, but requires the best minds as well. So how are you building the company, managing both being a professor in IISc and being a co-founder of LatentForce?
So if there is one thing that is abundant in our country is talent. Okay, when I do get extraordinary students, when these were my students once, right? So we do get phenomenal students in our universities, at least the top tier universities. So they would feed into the company, as Vinay said. A lot of good applications would come up and so on. I think where we actually miss out is, they are all raw talent, in the sense that you just talked about these engineers being paid in multi-millions and so on. It is not because of the raw talent that they get paid. So they get paid because they know the secret sauces of building these models. So for instance, you cannot build a foundational model, for instance, without knowing a lot of engineering tricks that would never come out. Right? I'll give you an example. Right? So how are these foundational models built? They are built by crawling the web, the entire World Wide Web, and you get data from multiple sources. Okay, so let's say that you scrape the entire Wikipedia, that becomes one data set. Then you scrape the entire Stack Overflow, that becomes one data set, and so on. Now, it has been seen empirically that the weightage that you assign to each of these sub sets of data has a huge impact on the performance of your foundational model. This is one of the 1,000 things that goes into these foundational model building. Now, what should be the data mixing ratio, as it is called, right? To get a good performance is something that is never out there. So these kinds of, these things only come through experiences. So only if you have done that, you understand these tricks. So these kinds of things are completely absent in India because we don't have that ecosystem at all, right? There are no foundational model building experience in anybody in this country. So raw talent
Slowly, developing slowly through a few startups. Yeah.
hopefully we get there, okay, sometime. But raw talent is definitely there. So where this raw talent is useful is that, see, people can come up with algorithms, novel algorithms very quickly. But when you are building large-scale engineering systems, the top-down experience matters a lot. It is in this area we are missing. Not us. The entire Indian ecosystem is missing. I'm also a part of this effort called Bharat Jan, right, where the government is trying to build sovereign models and so on. So we see the same problem there, right? So getting that kind of engineering talent is extremely hard. It's hard worldwide, harder in India. But raw talent, right, where you need people who are smart, can think, that is abundant in the country. And we have been successful in attracting those kinds of people. So I think we work with that. And eventually, maybe 2-3 years down the line, our engineers become experienced enough so that they become, the only thing that we hope for is they won't leave us and go and join Anthropic. That's our only hope. No, I think
there is enough storms in the geographic systems now that people.
But those people are also setting up their shops in India. That's where the problem is.
Google has it in a bunch of cases. Cool. So I think one question in terms of each of you, and you can differ in your answers or whatever. Like Vinay, you can start with this. Your take on where LatentForce will be in 2 years, and this will be same question repeats. I want to see the alignment of how each of you are thinking in terms of where you want LatentForce to be in 2 years. Where do you want LatentForce to be in 2 years?
Good for me. I can align my answers.
No, that is you have to be honest. You have to give your honesty. You need misalignment. Okay.
See, my honest answer is that, currently, normal individual developers are able to use the coding agents. They can see a value. Now, every enterprise can have a enterprise-wide context layer where they can actually have the fruits of these coding agents. They can use it in their SDLC, and there is a faster development cycle. Yeah, that's what we are hoping.
So what if I have to tell the users what you just said? Correct me if I'm saying it wrong. You're saying that doesn't matter what you use for your foundation layer. Once you have the context layer, the context graph that we are building in, it is going to increase your efficiency, like what Aravind was saying, token efficiency by 10x. And it doesn't even if you kind of change the foundational model that you're using, you still see the same efficiency. That knowledge is built for enterprise and it stays in the enterprise.
Yes, exactly.
Is that right?
And it gets curated over the years.
And then hence the enterprise will become efficient, and the knowledge, like to Prathosh's point, memory stays within the enterprise.
And not only in terms of the token reduction, it's about the quality of the coding agents' output will become better. So their output will be properly fitting into your ecosystem. Yeah.
So I got the CTO's answer because it's still saying technical. I'll come to the CEO now and say, what is your vision? And hopefully there'll be some parameters that will be set.
Yeah, so in my mind, it's that anyone who is coding, right, be it like indie developer or a large enterprise, right, like a team of people in a large enterprise, right? So we should be there and providing, the correct context for all of them, right? So, you can think of it this way. So right now, if you look at any software company, right, their IP is their code base, right? So what we believe is that code becomes something which is ephemeral, it's something which is temporary, right? An enterprise's knowledge, right? For example, if you take a payment gateway, right? So all the edge cases that you handle for in different countries and the different kinds of latency requirements, etc., which are there, right? So all of that learning becomes the product for you as a software company, right? We want to be that store of information, and that has to be the one that all coding agents and all software workflows plug into, right? So that's the idea. So we become the layer that holds the IP for a software company.
And how much money can you make? Because you see, you have to ask this question. He can answer that other question, but CEO, I'll come back to the what can you, so what is the economic value for an enterprise that's holding on to that, and how much hence they're willing to pay for it?
Yeah, so if you typically think about the TAM for software markets, right? It's first thing is that it's growing. So everything right now in the world is driven by software.
I think everything is upside down now. So,
upside
I
down
don't know
now.
what is going on, which way, right? It's hard to guess.
So easily you can think of it this way. So whatever GitHub does today, multiply that by at least 5 to 10 times, right? And that's the power of a context layer, right? So that's the TAM that you can sort of think about, right? So you have to think about that scale. So what GitHub does today is storing code, which is easier to do. If you want to store context for companies, that's going to be at least 5 to 10 times minimum that much, right? So that's the way.
So hence what, what is where are you going to be in terms of revenue in the next 2 years?
Yes, we expect at least, so for example, by end of this year, right? So we are looking at reaching a revenue run rate of around 3 million, right? And then, and the ramp we are seeing is like much higher, right? So end of 2 years, we should be at least seeing around 20-25 mil, right? If we execute it correctly.
You're on record now.
Yeah,
You wanted to be.
See, 20-25 mils, it might seem like a large.
Like, in terms of if you're spending, because Prathosh and me have had a lot of discussions also around this, if you're spending so much time, effort in building something, your one is putting your technology prowess and then building the tech talent is one, but shining in the world in terms of revenue is also another key parameter we all need.
Correct.
Yeah. So Prathosh, I know you're doubling up both as a prof in ISC, training students to join more companies like LatentForce. So
On a lighter note, my vision is 2 years later, okay, I make LatentForce my laboratory for all my research. I should be so rich that I should not be thinking about, I should not be asking government to fund my research. I have my money to fund my own research.
And that's I think awesome goal. I think that's a great vision to have.
So build something like, let's say, DeepMind from here. See, it's like this. No, research funds your innovation. Innovation leads to economy. That creates value and revenue goes back to research. So the more revenue you would have, the more research that you can do, and that cycle is what I would like to establish. Actually, so that's the short answer.
No, that's actually a great vision to have. Lovely. It's been great talking to all three of you.
Same here.
In one shot, and wish you all the very best in Prathosh to build this, a company that can fund a lot of innovation, and Aravind, to your point of getting to the scale, the revenues you're looking at, and Vinay, for you to keep pushing the technology onward. Thanks. Lovely talking to you all.
Thanks for having us, and I should actually say this on record that you believed in our vision. So I should thank Nagananda and the entire team of Ideaspring and also our other investor, Ali. So because as I said in the initial part, right, it's very hard for a prof to convince the ecosystem. We are honestly thankful to believing in us.
No,
thank you.
Great. Thanks.